Also, you might notice that I'm not Rob, and there it is. He has another meeting he has to host, so I am your temporary host and will do my best to fill his space here. I'm also going to invite Rosemary to do our opening, but I want to, before that, say, if you're somebody who's new to this meeting, maybe be prepared after she speaks to just give your name and your organization so that we know you're in the room. Sometimes she invites people to that and there's this dead silence because I think people who are new to the meeting don't know they're going to be asked that. So just a heads up, and I'll pass it over to Rosemary.
Thank you, Teresa. Well, welcome everybody to the weekly meeting of the Coalition to End Homelessness, where you are a member if you're committed to ending homelessness and engaging others with respect. Today, as all days, we gather on the homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who have stewarded this coastal home for thousands of years. We challenge ourselves and all our neighbors to respect their wisdom and warnings about the earth we share. The reality of sharing the earth becomes very clear when we face natural disasters. Those in the eyes of a hurricane or the path of a raging fire know the power of a shared response. Some people speak of their helping actions in such situations as bringing an intense feeling of connection to others, perhaps even a spiritual high. Today, I'm thinking about sharing the earth with one another in the towns and neighborhoods of our region in the midst of the unnatural disaster of growing homelessness. What can we learn about ourselves and our capacity for response in making this sharing of the earth an experienced reality? As a coalition, we act to ensure that all Pierce County residents have access to safe and secure shelter. This feels like an ever elusive goal. As Jeffrey said earlier in the conversation, the duration of the crisis can be, 100, 200 years. Especially as the earth we need to share has been carved up into mostly individual financial investments, or the costs of taxing all of us to build publicly supported housing appear out of reach. We find ourselves needing to focus on such issues as no camping bans, the effects of sweeps, the realities of not enough temporary shelter options, not enough facilities for those dealing with health issues, or people not qualifying for spaces that do exist. And yet somehow we have all come to this work. Some of us have been carving out greater and greater spaces in our lives to unnatural disaster relief, as well as imagining possible futures where we can all survive and thrive. And in the process, we've become different people. Sometimes we may wish our eyes hadn't been opened to the needs and the challenges, but here we are. We each have a story, an event, a relationship, a book, a job, a situation which led us here and made it so we can no longer look away. At some point, we realized that if something was going to be different, we had to be part of the team. Indeed, as poet June Jordan famously stated, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And as we continue to commit ourselves to the work, poet Lucille Clifton reminds us that we're not done yet. She says, as possible as yeast, as imminent as bread, a collection of safe habits, a collection of cares, less certain than I seem, more certain than I was, a changed changer. I continue to continue where I have been. Most of my lives is where I'm going. So welcome to our open table where we learn and act together for as long as it takes. Here we are at the meeting, and meetings always have some kind of rules. So let me just start by putting in the chat if I can find where it is here, putting in the chat the norms that we have for our meeting. And we ask people to raise your hand when you, oops, did I get it? There we go. We ask people to raise your hand function if possible on your computer, or if you're on something that doesn't allow you to do that, to wave your hand madly so that you be recognized. We ask that you keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, and that if you're doing something else, answering a phone or doing some other action at your space, to take your video off as well, so we're not distraction. So those are our general norms, and the chat is a space for those of you who are new that becomes very active during this meeting. It's a place to put your comments, to put your questions, to welcome others whom you just have met, or to say hello to those you haven't. to use it as a place to network. It's saved. It's a document that we have available to people. We put in our information about how to contact us and for new resources and events. So please use that space. And then we have the norms that I posted in the chat. For the ones for Zoom are clear, but the other ones are also ones for community norms where we speak with respect and try to not speak too often. If we do speak once or twice and then have more to say, try the chat for that for a while so that others can have a chance. So with that, and with Teresa's earlier prompting, if there's anyone who's new or returning after a long time away, this is time to just unmute you, raise your hand, be recognized, and see if Teresa can do that. I may as well. And let us know you're here, and if you're with a group, what group you're representing or being part of. So, see if any raised hands. Carolee.
Carolee, how do you say your name?
Hi, it's Carolee. Yeah.
Carolee.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carolee. I'm the community resource intern at Trinity Lutheran Church in Parkland.
Welcome, Carolee. We're very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Jenny.
Hi, everyone. Jenny Lorton. I am dropping in this morning because I wanted to see all of your beautiful faces. I only have about 30 minutes, but I wanted to drop in and say hi and see everybody. I have just recently accepted a board position for Golden Goose Homes. Ryan Booker, I'm sure, has been here to speak about the project. So I am sitting on the board. So I am very excited about that because I get to keep my foot in this community. So I'm super excited about that. So I will try and drop in here as frequently as I can, but I just wanted to say hi to everybody again. And I'm so excited to see all of your faces.
We miss you too, Jenny. It's good to see your face.
I miss all of you too.
Great. Good luck on that project. It's an important one. Melinda.
Hi, everyone. I work with Fusion. We're located in Federal Way, but we have 4 transitional homes in Northeast Tacoma. We have been in existence for 29 years, so we may be a well-kept secret. I lived in Puyallup and wasn't aware of Fusion for many years. So one of my goals is to start to get to know everyone in this group and hopefully start breaking down some barriers to having cross-county conversations. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful thing you're offering there, Melinda. Thank you for joining us. Well, it looks like that may be it for this. If you're new or been away a while and want to reintroduce yourself in the chat, this is a good place to do that. And we welcome that. And if you'd like to be contacted about anything specific, put that in there too, and people will be reading it. So I'll turn it back to you, Teresa.
All right. And thank you, Rosemary. And just so everybody knows, Garrett is here at the meeting too, and he is, the two of us are trying to complete one Rob. So Garrett, please feel free to interrupt me or nudge me or do whatever if I'm going off track. So we're doing This Week on the Streets, and for new people, this is a time that we hear from people who are interacting with folks on the street or who are observing things on the street to talk about what's happening in Pierce County around homelessness. So this is another raise your hand thing, and let us know if you have something you want to share about This Week on the Streets. All right, I'm going to prime the pump. The notices were posted on G Street from 11th to 15th. That's my neighborhood. That's where the G Street Mural Campground is. And there's a lot of chaos around that and some uncertainty. So I'm really glad that Caleb is here to talk with us. I'm guessing that will be one of the things he talks about during his time. And Zara? I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share share. I'm not sure if my video is working or not.
It
But I have been out at 35th and Pacific. I know we were trying to figure out about how many people were there last week. I'm pretty sure that there's quite a few more people come into the camp. I've noticed a lot of newer faces, especially a lot of young people, in particular young women. So I don't know if, or people who present as women. So I don't know if, I forget her name from the Coffee Oasis, is on this week, but particularly if the folks from G Street are going to be kind of moving, and I don't know if that's a place where more people will be coming in, but I just want us all to know that the count at 35th and Pacific, I believe, is higher than 50 at this point, which I know is more than the proposed amount of new spots in the shelter. So I just kind of wanted everybody to be aware of that. I did also want to say, slightly off topic, but I got a donation of 2 wheelchairs. So if anybody needs those wheelchairs, I also have quite a lot of warm women's clothing. So I'll be reaching out to shelters kind of individually, as well as doing some outreach on that. But if anybody needs wheelchairs specifically, feel free to hit me up. I'll put my email in the chat.
I just took the last wheelchair from the neighborhood clinic, so you might contact them and see if they would like a replacement.
Okay,
Um,
what's
I'll put them in the chat.
Perfect, thank you.
Jeffrey.
As far as 35th and Pacific, yes, the people at 34th and Pacific are being offered first shot at getting sites at the 35D sanctioned site there next door. However, not everybody there is going to take the offer. I have been told by some of the campers that they will not be taking that offer. I am starting to remind people that the city of Tacoma is working on a camping ban, and that they need to pay attention to that it's something that we have that is going to be a concern for everyone. Thank you.
Anyone else have something you're noticing out there, or something you need help with that you're doing out there? Hi, Ed. Go ahead.
Hello. One of the things that happened a day or so ago was the reconfirmation of Martin versus Boise in a Oregon court, or actually it's the Ninth Court of Appeal, but it's from a lawsuit in Grants Pass, and they reconfirmed most everything in the Martin versus Boise ruling. I know of 2 lawyers that are taking time to read the whole 88-page publication, or the ruling itself, to see if it applies to the proposed camping ban here in Tacoma. No guarantees, no promises, but hopefully we'll be able to apply that and be able to kill this proposed camping ban.
Thank you for that. Leo.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So this is not something specifically on the street. My name is Leo. I'm with the Tacoma Rescue Mission. My team and I are specifically working for employment stability. I just wanted to report that we're noticing a higher increased volume of participants who are reaching out for our services. I just want to remind everyone that you do not have to be staying at the mission or seeking services for the mission to use the employment services or the document preparation things that my team does as far as ID cards and birth certificates, etc. There's a couple of different ways they can connect with me. I will put my email back in the chat for those of you who may not have it, but also if they reach out to any of our outreach members, we do have some times during the week that are better to engage because I do have a small team. But I just want to remind everyone that we are there, we are available. And I know with the winter months coming, we would love to see people getting substantial employment so that they can move on into housing if they so choose to do so.
Thank you for that, Leo. And maybe we'll have you come and do a community spotlight on that specific service, because then you can have a little more time to let people know how it works.
That sounds great.
All right, Kathy.
Well, I'm not sure if this is word on the street, but we did have a rally before the Tacoma City Council meeting on Tuesday, and many of us went into the chamber afterwards and testified. Quite a good representation from this coalition, and it was very nice to meet people face to face instead of on a screen and see you this big. So that was one positive thing that came out of that meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you for that. And thank you for all of the people who chose to activate their civic engagement bones. Anyone else? Well, Garrett has one of Garrett's fun polls for us to see who's in the room. So we'll take a minute to do that. Take it away, Garrett.
Thanks. So it's always interesting to know who's joining us today. So we haven't done this in a while, but I'm just putting a poll up and it's multiple choice and you can mark as many as you want, just like the worst kind of multiple choice tests ever invented. So if you can just take a minute, options are if you're a volunteer, if you have lived experience of homelessness, if you're an advocate, you can be all of these, maybe. Some of these, government employee like me, outreach worker, shelter provider, some other homeless service provider, rapid rehousing, case management, whatever, nonprofit employee, or you work for a for-profit business or own one, or you're just a community member. So we're going to go ahead and let that tick along here. So many things to check. Last time we did this was like over a year ago, and nearly a quarter of the folks in the room had personal experience of homelessness. Lots of volunteers, lots of nonprofit employees. Interesting to see how it changed this time around. So I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And there we have the results. So half of you identified as being an advocate. That's our biggest group. We had another 39% community members. That's a new category this time around, so I can't compare that to the past. We have 30% you volunteering, 30% nonprofit, 28% other homeless service providers, 19%, so 10 of us with lived experience in the room. So super cool. Anyway, I'll get this out to the group, but thanks everyone. And back to you, Teresa.
All right. Well, this was a week that I offered to do this little bit on. Oh, there you go. Thank you for.
Yeah, now I got it right.
So take a look at that while it's up. I think it's my fault that it disappeared because I'm a co-host and I thought I was getting it off my screen and I got it off everybody's screen. So there it is. And it is an interesting piece of information. So can I don't know if I click the little red X, am I going to stop it for everyone, Garrett?
I
just did that. Okay.
I did it.
All right. So I didn't realize I was going to be doing the hosting. So you're going to hear my voice another time. Here it is. I want to share a resource sheet that I recently came upon and ask you all to take a look at this. So I'm starting at the bottom of the sheet. Here are the free clinics according to this resource sheet, and I'm guessing that some of you know that some of this is very, very old. So the place on 2342 Tacoma Avenue is no longer, and 2 of these resources are about that. In terms of showers, both of these shower locations no longer do showers. And then up here we have the shelters, which does anyone here remember when Nativity House, here's Nativity House up here, when Nativity House was on Jefferson and they just were a day drop-in center? That's how old this resource sheet is. Also, I wanted to come up here. I'm not telling you whose resource sheet this is because I would bet that almost everyone in this room has done a printed resource sheet at some point in the past, thinking that we're doing a good thing and not realizing that they never die. So this is not anyone in particular. It's just, this is the reality of old resource sheets. That was a Freudian slip. Old resource sheets that live on. And here's some other things, resource numbers. I checked these out, and mostly this Coalition to End Homelessness number is from before we merged with the Friday meeting. So that part is just to say, that's what it looks like. That's what can come back to haunt you. So we can't go back in time and change what happened then, but I wanted to make a plea to everyone who works with resources. We have the Tacoma Tent News, which has a date right on it. That's already kind of solved. And so the resources that are put there, people who look at those know their age. Also, Associated Ministries puts out a resource booklet. There's a date on that. That would be the first thing that I want to just ask that people do as resource hygiene sort of work, to make sure that when you're handing out something, even if you're putting it up on the web, please put the date on it that you know those resources were good on. That was a weird sentence, but basically let us know when it was last checked. So if I come onto oh, that's the other thing I wanted to show you, that it's not just printed resources where we have this issue. Here's another one that is, whoops. Oh, no, that's not it. Here it is. Here's what's on the National Coalition to End Homelessness about Tacoma Pierce County Coalition for the Homeless, which was the name of this organization before it became the Tacoma Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. And this is the information that's out on the web right now about Tacoma. If you look under Washington, under the national site, this is what you'll find. So the question is it our job as an organization to go out there and figure out where we're not being represented properly and fix it? Is it the job of the person who's hosting the site to make sure that everything on their site is up to date? And I'd say the answer is yes. If we all work on that, we may get something close to reality. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but when you are someone who keeps being turned down and your whole life looks as if it's a series of being told no, we want to eliminate as many of those as we can. So even if it's just a number that, like the one, there's a city number that comes up and you get after about 15 rings, because I hung in there, after about 15 rings, you get a message that says the person at this number isn't answering. You're going to be disconnected. Please try again later. That's not something you want someone to do with their cell phone minutes. So I'm guessing that most of you already believe this and know this and are doing these kinds of things in the resource sheets you put out. But for anyone who isn't, please consider doing that. And if you have an intern working with your organization and they have extra time and you can't figure out what to have them do, call me. I would love to ask them to follow up on some of these resource sheets and fix them and contact people. So don't just don't find busy work for your interns. Let's put everybody to work on fixing this. All right, that's my pitch. Does anybody want to say anything? Because you may have ideas that I didn't express. All right. So that brings us on to a much more professional presentation from our wonderful Janet. Is Verna presenting with you too? No, okay. So this is in response to a lot of questions that have come up about health, and I'm hoping that Janet will do her little bit about, it's not just about how many people die, but so Janet, talk to us.
Well, good morning, everybody. What I'm going to talk about usually results in eyes glazing over. It's a tough topic, but it impacts all of us. It's diabetes and its impact on those who are living homeless, looking at the coming bad weather. So Teresa, can you start the PowerPoint? And also, Teresa, can you check the chat or no, not Teresa, Garrett, can you start the PowerPoint, please? Or okay, there we go. Garrett, how do I advance it, or do you advance it?
I will advance it. You just have to make the little ding sound, like when you used to have the little the read along book thing with your record player. So.
Boy, I remember that. Okay, well, here we go. Now, I know that absolutely everybody here knows somebody or that are themselves diabetic. I know that everybody has a personal experience with diabetes, either personally, in your family, at work. We all know folks who are diabetic. This is a chart of, in a perfect world, how somebody who has been diagnosed diabetic would manage their diabetes. They would get 1,600 calories a day. They would have the proper proportion of protein, carbs, and fat. They would eat at the right time so that the release of insulin would be, the healthiest. Okay, look how complicated this is. You have to have control over your daily schedule. You have to have control over your diet. You have to know what the difference between a carb and a protein is. So imagine not even having a home. Next slide. Oh, do I hit something? There we go. All right. Okay, this is from the CDC. Those of us in public health still believe in CDC as a website, as our Bible for collected data on what's going on with public health. So this is for the current CDC page. More than 37 million adults have diabetes, 20% don't know it. Aren't there only, that's 10% of the population. So that's a whole bunch of people. It's the 7th leading cause of death. It's the first cause of kidney failure, amputations, and blindness. And this is the scary part. It has more than doubled in just 20 years. Go ahead and hit. Okay, so we've established that there's a lot of us with diabetes, and we know somebody with diabetes. Why do we care? Let's talk about what diabetes means as a disease. So you eat something, you eat a donut, okay, you eat the donut, then it goes to your stomach. In the stomach, it enters the bloodstream. In the bloodstream, that sugar that you ate on the donut triggers the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin is the hormone that allows the end user, which is the cell, your end user, your organ cell, to be able to use the energy. Okay, with diabetes, you either have, and there's different types of diabetes. Type 1 is typically you're born with it. It has a higher genetic component to it. And your body, your pancreas just doesn't make enough insulin to be useful. Type 2 is the type of diabetes that has doubled in the last 20 years. So in type 2, your pancreas is still there, but it's not working efficiently enough to manage all the sugar that is being dumped into the bloodstream. The problem is, if there's not enough insulin, or if your pancreas has stopped responding to the trigger, then the sugar stays in your vessels, in your blood vessels, because your blood carries the sugar to the end user, but it hangs on in the blood vessel. It doesn't get to the cell that needs it for energy, and it causes damage to the inside of the blood vessel, okay? So when it can't get, or when the blood vessel itself is damaged, we call that atherosclerosis. When the organ doesn't get enough sugar to be able to function properly, we get organ disease. And the most common organs that get disease from lack of sugar are the heart, eyes, and kidneys. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is really technical stuff. I am, you know, how many of us took anatomy and physiology, and when we did, how long ago was it? So we go to experts to explain these things. This is an article from 2013 that talks about the vascular complications of diabetes and why it's that way. Next slide, please. Okay, a simple diagram. You have too much sugar in the blood is called hyperglycemia. There's also too much, typically there's too many lipids in the blood. Your body has two ways of handling this. There are natural protective factors, and then there's the way by which the damage is actually occurring. All of these are acronyms or actual names for what's going on, but the end result is that we've got damaged vessels, damaged kidneys, damaged eyes. Next slide, please. So in the previous slides, because I put this together knowing that most of us aren't going to remember most of what I'm saying today. And you know, there's going to be some takeaway points, but if you want to get a little bit deeper into it, then this slide here explains the previous slide. Next slide. So there was a great lecture in 2021 by this Julia Kenny, Natalie Saints, connecting diabetes with the social determinants of health. Next slide, please. Okay, she quoted in this lecture this article that is there, and everything I say is quoted from another resource, because I don't make up any of this stuff. 2,683 people were studied. In this study, the social economic status characteristics were compared between folks who are living homeless and folks who are not. Homeless patients have twice the odds of having unmet medical needs, just in general, twice the odds of unmet medical needs. And we worry about unmet medical needs because that's what ends up using our EMS, our emergency medical services. Without proper treatment, especially with an eye to prevention of complications, folks end up in the ER, go to the hospital, cost everybody a ton of money, okay? So that is, besides the actual impact on that person. So twice the odds, and then also twice the odds of going diabetes among homeless folks is 22% of all of those who are homeless are diabetic. So we're talking about a big number of people, high percentage of rates with diabetes, unmet needs, consequences that have implications for all of us. Next slide, please. Now we're getting into the big picture. The social determinants of health is what is impacting an individual's health. So we've got national, state, and local health policy. Right now, we've got President Biden, who is the third administration in that I can remember bringing up food as something that should be considered, specifically food insecurity, as something that should be considered as part of a healthcare plan. So if we can provide better food to a greater percentage of the population, we will have perhaps and probably lower poor outcomes for all of our population in the future. So national policy is there. Local policy, I consider the camping bans as a local policy that is going to have a direct impact on our folks who have to live in the street and therefore have higher rates of food insecurity. If we've had lectures in this group about the network poverty. If we have network poverty, and that's reflecting this last point, the family and social networks, if we don't have a place to go, then our family doesn't have a place to go, then we don't even have a place to manage something like, where do we keep our insulin? Insulin has to be refrigerated. And I just saw in the chat that Lori Jenkins is here, and I am so glad that Lori Jenkins is here because policy is Lori's middle name. And policy actually is one of our saving graces. We need to focus on policy. Next slide, please. Okay, it is the last day of September. Last year, 9 months ago, we had an incredibly awful week of bad cold weather. So SDOH is an acronym for Social Determinants of Health. Go back to that first picture. Think about that first picture where we're supposed to count the number of calories. We're supposed to know the kind of calories. We're supposed to know all these different food groups. We're supposed to have beautiful plates of food at specific times. Think about being houseless and all of these layers of determinants above the individual that denies that individual even a refrigerator. So the social determinants of health in the event of adding yet another layer of complication and a huge barrier to our health. Cold weather impacts all of these things: housing, food, social vulnerabilities. Think about ACEs. Adverse childhood experiences have a long-term effect on behavior. I mean, that's a whole different topic. That's a whole different PhD course. You combine a high ACE score with homelessness and then throw in cold weather. It's pretty damning, actually. It's damning. All of these things are impacted. Next slide, please. Okay, so The Guardian, which is, I think it's highly respected by all political bents. The Guardian published an article in just February of this year. Homelessness is lethal. Next slide, please. Okay, The Guardian studied 20 cities or counties. The gross number of those living homeless, so the gross number in just 5 years' time, doubled in 18 out of 20 of those major metropolitan areas. And two examples there is LA and New York. A lot of this data, and Garrett is an expert at explaining the barriers and the pitfalls of data, but without data, we can do nothing as far as policy. So this count, and I didn't go deep enough into it, but if this count was done by the point in time count, all of us of Pierce County know that our local point in time count, you know, God love the county for doing a point in time, but we know that point in time count is grossly undercounting those who live homeless. So these are extremely conservative numbers. So if LA is saying that in 2020, they had 1,600 folks living homeless, we know that that number was undercounted. The big takeaway on this is that the places that did list the cause of death, and we've got Ed Jacobs in our coalition, who is working closely now with our Pierce County medical examiner on trying to get us current data. In fact, Ed Jacobs got our current medical examiner to realize that we were undercounting the deaths of those living homeless because of one particular criteria. So even here in Pierce County, where we care about folks who are living homeless, our system was not sophisticated enough to capture the real number of those who died while living homeless. We're correcting that. You know, we have to give our county officials a lot of kudos for recognizing past mistakes and working with us to be more accurate. But in those counties that listed the cause of death, the cause of death, number one is drug overdose, violence, traffic deaths, such as being pushed into the street in busy traffic, and preventable conditions like diabetes. Okay, this is not the same list as for the general population. Did you see cancer on that list? This is not the same list as the general population. And that the point there on New York and LA having a large number of deaths by COVID-19, we think that probably those who are living homeless and unsheltered had a much better chance of surviving or not even getting COVID-19, right? It's the congregate setting that the COVID bug or any communicable disease loves the congregate setting. So we need our congregate setting shelters, but in the face of a pandemic, that is where communicable disease loves to thrive. The conclusion by this Guardian article was the overall jump in deaths reflect two things: the growth of the sheer number of unhoused people and the number of growing dangers is contributing to the mortality rate of those living homeless. So next slide, please. The end. So you can shut it off, turn it off. I did not, my time is up in about 90 seconds. So this slide can be shared with anybody, and I will come and talk to anybody about this. I am not an expert by any means. I am a public health nurse. I am not a certified diabetic nurse educator, but we do have Brian here from Molina. And if we have any other healthcare insurance people, every healthcare insurance policy typically has a nurse hotline or a certified diabetic nurse educator. If you've got, and everybody here has access to insurance, unless you're the working poor, which is a whole different topic. If you have insurance and you have a question about your particular care or your family care, go to your nurse hotline or your certified diabetic nurse educator. If you don't, then go to your primary care provider, who should be able to route you through to a diabetic, because it's a very complicated situation. Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Just a quick update on some things we're doing out here in a albeit a much smaller community in Gig Harbor in the Key Peninsula. For a couple of years, we have made this a point of discussion with our food banks. We have 4 out here talking about improving nutrition, what food we have available that the homeless will come into the food banks to receive. And every one of them has responded and are cognizant of trying to not, reduce the amount of sugar, reduce the amount of things packed in sugar and syrups. Working with the Gig Harbor Rotary, we now have little food pantries, 5 or up. We'll have 10 probably in another 3 months. Those are all focused on very healthy food solutions for people who will come by and use them. Jenna, you know Emergency Food Network pretty well, and Michael Pretty, she identifies as she, works for Michelle Douglas, and she actually focuses and develops nutritional strategies and research for EFN. And EFN now supports about 75 or 80 food banks and food pantries in Pierce County. Be a great place to maybe have Michelle come in and talk about what they're doing, and onward, elevate this discussion with the other food banks in the county to say, we know you can't control the donations you get. If Costco gives you 40 cases of cakes and pies and pastries, those are going to be out there. You can't waste them. But when you go out to buy food or order food, focus on the things that are higher nutrition and value. That's it.
Thank you, Bob. That's I'm glad you all are doing that out there. And I'm going to take we've got Tricia and Monique on. They have to be short comments because we're getting behind on our schedule. And then I'm going to ask anyone else who has a question or comment to put it in the chat. So, Patricia.
I'll make mine short. I just wanted to show up another system, particularly for providers, that with diabetes that is uncontrolled, you have the mental health changes, you have the memory changes, you have fatigue. These all play a part in how somebody can care for themselves on the street. And sometimes if people are acting a little odd, it could be due to high sugar levels as well as low. So thank you for letting me share.
All right, Monique.
Yeah, I'll be quick too. Thank you. This is why I continue to advocate for sanctioned encampments, because those living homeless cannot cook themselves a nutritious meal out there on the street. But if we have sanctioned encampments, they can cook in that kitchen. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the kitchen that you provide at Bob Hope. So now hold all that, please. All that Jan said and all of the comments and anything that's rolling around in your head, because we're going to have a breakout session in just a few minutes. But before that, we're going to have Timothy Harris take us through our last conversation.
Okay, I'm here. Usually Rob puts up the summary that I did before. Do you or Garrett have that?
Yeah, give me a sec.
All righty. So I'll just kind of jump in the meanwhile. So this is a couple of weeks old. We didn't have a breakout session last week. This is from the September 16th meeting, and what we talked about was how should the county prioritize rental assistance funds and what key factors should determine eligibility. Holy shit, look at that. It's even on Tacoma Pierce County Coalition letterhead. That is so slick. So on the list of things that should be prioritized, most of there was a theme of equity and homeless prevention that I noticed in here, although not all of them fall within that, but a lot of them do. Households who are not able to work due to temporary illness, whose rents have increased excessively, groups disproportionately impacted by evictions, general priorities, those under 30% AMI, on fixed income, seniors, disabled with children. Consider maintaining BIPOC residents in communities where they have generational presence. A priority for those who have been incarcerated and at risk of losing their housing, at risk of recidivism. Small landlords who can't afford to carry unpaid rent bills. people who just need a small amount to keep them in housing. Again, the homeless prevention theme. An idea about a sort of a related idea, a micro-funding approach where small amounts might preserve existing housing. Prioritizing families at risk of losing housing, especially those with children, and then groups of individuals sharing housing where the funding could keep multiple people in their homes. A few things that people thought should not be prioritized is rental assistance to folks that are in subsidized housing simply because they have other avenues available to meet that need, and then concern that reaching those with the greatest need experiencing chronic homelessness would burn through the funds quickly. But you know, that's not what this fund is really set up for anyway. There were a few other considerations in there at the bottom. I'm not going to go through them all, but it was suggested that some sort of a risk matrix that scores candidates on vulnerability factors would be helpful. And then later on, there's a little discussion about, you know, the difficulties of that and kind of the ethics of it and people struggling with that. And a really cool suggestion about how there should be a problem-solving conversation integrated into the process, much like there is with coordinated entry, that explores perhaps other alternatives to drawing on the fund. And that's about it. That's the summary.
Thank you for doing that. Tim always gets things, all of our kind of random ideas, when I see them in the chat, they look like total chaos, and then he organizes them so they sort of make sense. And I appreciate that. And I'm guessing that's going forward to the county about, because that was a question they asked. So we now get a chance to do this again and know that we will have our stuff put together by Timothy again. This breakout session is in relation to the Jan's wonderful presentation about some of the perils of health when you're homeless. And not everyone in this room will have experience of trying to help someone to get health care who has needs. So if you're in this group and you fit into that category, listen to what people say, react to it. If you have ideas, put them out there. This is really the question is about what is I'm going to read it direct from what Rob said so I don't get it wrong. So what are the challenges you've had in trying to connect people who are on the street with health and mental health help? So that's the question, and what we should make sure we have something to drop into the chat when we come back. Make sure that someone in your group is willing to take notes and put them in the chat so we get the wisdom of that little room. And then, yeah, even though that's the question, if you don't have that experience, add your thoughts. Something should churn up. And Garrett's going to put us in rooms, and we are going to have, looks like we were supposed to have 15 minutes, and I think we can still do our 15 minutes. So we'll be, yeah, you got the 15. So it'll be 10:10 when we come back.
All right, we've got some breakout rooms. I'm going to get you all sent there, and 10:10, we'll see you back in the big room. How about back to you, Teresa?
How about I unmute? Welcome back. Please do, if you are the note taker in the room, please do post the notes there. If you didn't assign a note taker in your room, please everybody put whatever thoughts you have in there and just put your room number there if you can remember it. So thank you for taking time to think about that. And I look forward to hearing what Tim puts together next time. We're now on to government updates, and we're only a little bit behind. So I know that Jeff Rogers is in the room. Are you game for starting, Jeff?
Sure. We're coming up for air. We have been very, very busy this week finalizing our continuum of care application. If you're not familiar with continuum of care, it's a large funding cycle of federal funds that we apply for from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That application was due today, but we were able to submit it on Wednesday. We've moved on to our next cycle. So HUD will announce sometime in early spring next year the funding awards for those programs nationally. We're now moving on to working on the unsheltered homelessness funding opportunity that HUD has out for some additional money. This week, the application evaluation committee met. There were 5 applications submitted. One application was deemed ineligible because these programs require match and they didn't have sufficient match dollars to support their program. So we're going to be submitting to HUD by October 20th additional application. We received application requests of over $8 million over a 3-year period of funding, and the max we could get based on the dollars HUD has put out is just over $4 million. So it's a tough decision, but there's 4 projects being submitted to HUD by October 20th for that additional money. As I mentioned last time, we're doing a youth homeless point-in-time count. It's being done a little differently than our standard point-in-time account because it's a targeted specific population. And with this count, we count unsheltered, literally homeless, as well as those youth who are at risk of homelessness. So we have a couple of different approaches of how we're doing this. If you're interested in volunteering, please shoot me an email. That's on October 20th. I just put those 2 dates together. That application's due to HUD on the 20th, and then we're doing our point-in-time count on the 20th. What a crazy day. So that's another big thing we're working on, is working on that. And we're excited to have the folks over in the Gig Harbor Key Peninsula area so heavily engaged, so heavily involved in this point-in-time count. They're coming into this work with us and doing some great things over on the Peninsula Gig Harbor side of the bridge there to ensure that folks in that area are identified and counted. And Bob is taking the lead with that. So Bob, just want to say thank you. Appreciate all the hard work you're doing and the connections you're making out there. It's great to experience that. That's all I have to give an update on.
Any questions for Jeff?
Jeff, can I jump in with something for the county? Did you mention
Absolutely.
Did you mention the Rapid Acquisition Award notice?
I did not.
So Lehigh, Low Income Housing Institute, applied for state rapid acquisition funding for the purchase of the Heron Apartments. So that's an 80-something unit apartment building, which they were awarded. So that is going to become 50 units of permanent supportive housing and 30-some units of affordable, I think, workforce housing. So that's exciting. So hats off to Lehigh continually for being ready for money when it becomes available from the state. And I'd love for there to be many more opportunities, shovel-ready opportunities. So again, hats off to Lehigh. The money became available. They were the only Pierce County application for that funding, and added 50 units of permanent supportive housing, which is a big stinking deal. So excellent news there.
Garrett, you triggered my brain to add one more thing to that because I totally spaced it until you mentioned that. But MDC, Metropolitan Development Council, is working with us to execute a contract to bring an additional 50 units of permanent supportive housing targeted towards chronically homeless persons with disabilities. And it looks like they're going to open that facility in the Hilltop sometime in the month of October. So there'll be an additional 50 units as well of permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless with disabilities that they'll be opening up as well.
Thank you for that. That's always good to get a little good news amidst all of the rest of this. And Alfred, you have a question? You're still muted.
Okay. What I do have a question. You were talking about having acquired a apartment complex or something like that. Now, is this an apartment complex that is either being constructed, or is this one that's
The Heron is new construction, so there's nobody currently living in the apartment building.
Yeah, that was what my question was, because if you, if you acquire a place or whatever that's already occupied, then you run into a few issues.
Yeah, and buying apartment buildings not my favorite thing in the world. I would much rather us build housing units than move housing from the open market into subsidized affordable housing. Just because we are so desperate for units, I'd rather see us build or acquire hotels, right? Turn temporary housing into permanent housing. But it's important for us to have affordable housing. And so this is a great way to do it through, if that's what the money allows us to do, then that's what we do. But to your point, let's not displace people that are currently living there.
All right, so we are doing okay. We're almost on time, and we have Jenny. I saw Jenny is here to report from the health department. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Happy to be here as always. Pretty good news in our health world right now from public health. I mean, despite everything we've been talking about, we know that there are so many gaps in our abilities to do medical, and there's so many medical needs. But from our perspective, in terms of communicable disease, COVID hospitalizations are down. CDC has us rated consistently the last several weeks as a low level community risk. Things have been very quiet on the outbreak front. We haven't had outbreaks in our shelter system. Continuing to work with our partner Discovery Health to do more COVID vaccine clinics at some of the larger shelters. Bivalent booster is now available throughout the county. That booster protects against the newest strain. So anyone who's had, for whom it's been last shot is eligible for that booster. Monkeypox, we've also seen a stabilization in cases across the nation, and here in Pierce County, have not seen any cases to our knowledge in our shelter systems. We do have one of our adult family homes that we were using for isolation and quarantine for COVID. We've transitioned that into being available for isolation for anyone who has monkeypox who needs space to isolate should it be needed. Hopefully it will not be, but you can reach out to me with questions or call our call center, which I will share that number. And then I have a fact sheet that's sort of a one-stop shop for homeless service providers about monkeypox, and I will share that link as well. Other news from us, we've got our STD team is doing active work at the 14th and 15th and G site around syphilis testing, surveillance, and management. We are doing interviews next week, starting interviews next week for a position in our environmental health division that I've talked about in this meeting before. Adam Reichenberger has shared, but that will be a environmental liaison or homeless liaison or coordinator, and that person will help manage and run our cross-divisional group within the health department, and also be sort of a counterpart to me, will work with me to be a liaison to this group and other groups, but with more of a focus on environmental health issues. So inclement weather, fire, smoke, air quality, those kinds of things. So we're really excited about that. And then just a final reminder that I used to send you all a weekly email that came directly from me, and I'm moving to a system where I'm using the more formal department's Gov delivery system. So you will be getting, you should be getting already, a little bit more formal looking newsletter type communication it will come from the department. That is going to be twice a month instead of weekly, but it will contain all the information I've been sharing. So about communicable diseases like COVID and monkeypox, STDs, and then other information that's relevant and timely from our environmental health group and other parts of the department. And if you have suggestions on what you'd like to see from us in that mode of communication, I am always open to your feedback. So let me know. Any questions?
All right, well, thank you for that and for all the good outreach. I can testify to the fact that there is good outreach going on this street, at least as long as the encampment is here. So thank you.
Yeah, I got to shout out to the MRC there. They, Jan and Verna and others are just doing a fabulous job, and I'm feeling really good about how we can build on that and help collaborate. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anna.
Thank you. Wasn't there supposed to be 2 major sweeps during the week this week? And what was the result of that?
So I'm going to ask to move that to the side for a minute because, and let's take that up in the end of the meeting because that's not actually where we're at right now, but it's a very good question, and maybe put it in the chat so that people start thinking about it. Any other government updates? I'm thinking we may have finished that. So Rob asked that we talk for a minute about the proposed camping buffer zone. And so you have to imagine that this is Rob speaking. So this is coming up. We've talked about it previously, but I wanted to make sure that this is the like teaching to fish instead of giving a fish. So here, just type in your, if you want to be a part of giving response, and we hope that whatever your opinion is, whatever your feeling is, one of the things that is certain is that the city and the county have both been sending representatives to these meetings, and they want to hear what we have to say. And you are all uniquely qualified to give some sort of input to this, so please do. You type in the city council meeting. When you click on that, you get this lovely website, and even if your connection is a little bit pokey, and here's our wonderful city council in front of you. Over here on the left, you've got the meetings, the agenda and meeting and minutes that you can look at, and you've got down here, you have how to do your written public comments, and you have a lot of previous stuff, which can be interesting to dive into, but this is what I wanted to bring your attention to, the pending agenda items. So looking on that, there might be other things on this list that you are extremely interested in, but mostly our efforts here at the Homeless Coalition have been focused on trying to get anything to do with camping bans into the public eye and getting, if something's going to happen, we want to help it be as, have as little damage as possible. So here it is on here. This is the buffer zone. So I'm guessing most of you have heard this, but this 10-block buffer zone around the temporary shelters is what we're talking about. And I've just shown you how you can interact with the city on it. And this is a message from Rob. Please do interact with the city on it. And then we're going to turn to our county partners. And Garrett's going to talk with us a little bit about the comprehensive plan to end homelessness, which take it away, Garrett.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm going to try not to talk too long, but there's a couple hands up. Did you want to take those first?
Oh, are those questions about what I just said?
Not at all.
Okay, go ahead, Todd.
Thank you. 2 questions. At the last Tacoma Council meeting on Tuesday, some of you folks were there. So 2 questions. 1, what was the overall feeling of the council members that you experienced? And number 2, does this group have a email list or names of those members that are willing to go to council meetings and speak when the occasion arises?
Kathy, it looks like you might want to answer that.
So as far as reading the room, which is so awesome to be able to do when you're actually in the chamber rather than on Zoom, It's nice that our government is accessible, but it's really nice to go and see the people and let them know that you're still here and we're watching you. I got the feeling that a lot of the people that took the time to be in the room were in opposition to the camping ban. As Jeffrey indicated in the chat, it's 28831. That's the partial camping ban proposal, the buffer zones. A lot of the people who signed in via Zoom were in favor of it. And there was some people who were very angry. Why aren't we doing enough? And blah, 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 blah. My answer to their concerns about crime is most of the crimes that they mentioned were already illegal. So why not enforce those rather than criminalizing housed? That's my point. As far as on the council, there are some people who have given their stance, and there's some who haven't. And we really need to identify what their position is. So clearly those who sponsor the bill are going to be in favor of it, and that would be Councilmember Hines, Councilmember Rumbaugh, and Councilmember Bushnell are the co-sponsors of this particular ordinance. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Kathy. And I do want to encourage, because we do have to move on to our next agenda item, if you have some talking points that you can put out there for people who might be considering going to a meeting, please put them in the chat. And if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat. And those of you who are deeply involved in this, and there are many of you, please be responsive to those. Maybe do direct chats, or maybe even better, do it in the general chat so everybody gets to see the information. All right, thank you. And Garrett.
Thanks. So comprehensive plan to end homelessness. All right, so that's a group that's sort of supported by the county and has a plan that we're working on implementing, right? Just a little background there. We has an advisory board. So the next advisory board meeting is next Friday at 1 o'clock. So that's open to the public. And the focus of this meeting, so there's basically one topic per advisory board meeting that gets focused on. And next Friday, that topic is going to be money. So we are going to be breaking into 3 breakout groups to discuss ways that we can increase the amount of funding we need. So we need about $120 million a year to operate our homeless system. So that's not capital to buy things, that's our operational funding. And we're currently running at about 50 million, right? Or was it 160 million? That's right, 160 million, we're running about 50 million. So we got about a quarter of what we need. And so the discussion is going to be, where do we get that extra 100 million a year? Or as I like to say, the $1 billion problem. We need $1 billion over the next decade. And so we're going to be talking about our funding sources from the state and how those could be increased, hopefully from the federal government, and how those can be increased, what role faith communities, what role businesses, what role philanthropic, what local taxes we might want to consider. So there's a dozen different kind of taxes across the country that communities use to supplement their funding, looking at general funds from our different towns and cities. All of those are awful, right? We have a massively regressive system for taxing in Washington state. So one of the challenges that we have that other communities don't have is that we can't tax the rich people very effectively, right? Where Portland can say, oh, if you make over $300,000 a year, we're going to put an extra tax on you, right? We don't do that in Washington state. So, so kind of looking at some of the, and trying to work on creating a menu of the worst of the bad options for increasing our revenue. So that's going to be, I think, a really interesting discussion. And we're going to do breakout groups. It's not going to be our typical webinar format. So you'll be able to go and attend one of the breakout groups and listen in. And obviously provide feedback to me. And we're going to be working on a submission to the county council of a menu of options for them by the end of October. We're also going to have a presentation of some of our first published dashboards that are part of the comprehensive plan effort. And so that's very exciting. I was multitasking just now, working on testing of our new data warehouse. And so that project is moving on time and largely on budget, which is not usual. So hats off to the information technology crew at the county, because they've done a bang up job. And so that's exciting. So we're seeing evidence of what we have been saying we're going to do all along, which pleases me, because selling vaporware is not one of my favorite activities. So I think those are kind of some of the highlights. Obviously, we're continuing to work on increasing resources. At some point, we'll make an announcement about the state public right-of-way funding. That's over 3 years, about $55 million coming in the community, 300 additional shelter beds and rapid rehousing programs, some permanent supportive housing. So that's going to be cool to talk about. So yeah, and I think maybe I have 2 minutes here left of that chunk of time. If folks have questions, I'll make sure to get the materials for the meeting out to this group probably on Monday. I'll send that information out in an email to the group. There's a link on the, I'll put it in the chat, but the comprehensive plan to end homelessness at the county has a link to the Zoom meeting. So those are all treated like open public meeting. We follow the Open Public Meeting Act, even though technically it doesn't apply, but we do, because if you ain't transparent, what are you?
Transparency is good. Thank you, Garrett. And if anyone thinks of a question after this time is over, go ahead and put it in the chat. We have some stuff going on in the chat that I hope people are also noticing. We're going to have some committee reports, and then we're going to have a time where some of these things that people are bringing up can be put out there in the air. So Safe Sites for All update. Ann?
Yes, I want to give 2 minutes to Jeffrey Boyce to talk about what's going on at his site, and then 3 minutes to Paula Anderson to give us an update on safe parking. So Jeffrey, jump in here.
Okay, I will jump in here. On Saturday, 11 o'clock at All Saints Episcopal Church on 96th, that's 205 96th Avenue Street East. We are having a community meeting for safe parking at our church. This is working with Paula Anderson and the Safe Parking Network. The city has asked for a permit, which they are allowed to do. And we'll see how that goes forward. This is more of an informational meeting with the community. There has been some very loud pushback on the part of 3 different people. There has been some other people in the neighborhood who have spoken positively about doing this. So this is good. But I would say if anybody wants to come and listen, this would be a good time. I will be bringing data. Thank you, Garrett. I will be bringing data for education, because in many cases like this, we are working with people who do not understand the level of pain that is out there. They do not understand many of the people out there are not drug addicts. They're just trying to survive. And so this is the message that I will be bringing. And I think it would be beneficial for anybody who may get stuck in this situation sometime in the future to join us. Thank you. Where are you, Paula?
And Jeffrey, can you put in the chat the time, the date, and the address?
Sure.
Thanks. Paula, take it away.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So like Jeffrey said, we're going to have that meeting tomorrow. This is one of the first times we'll be testing a city ordinance on a property or trying to go through that process. I did have a church that was trying to do that in Puyallup. And because they are losing, they've lost a couple of their pastors there. It's one of the larger churches. They have declined to do safe parking, but they may be continuing, and I'm going to get an update today from my contact there. They may be continuing to pursue an ordinance change because the city of Puyallup has it's almost like a sanctioned encampment type ordinance that would be applied to safe parking as well. So some of the things that they have in there that might be similar to the one in Tacoma is if there's a time limit, and I don't know if I read through it quickly with the Tacoma one. I'm not sure if there's a certain time limit on that one, but the ordinance that we have with the Tacoma one is in reference to shelters, and it almost sounds more like stand-up shelters or emergency temporary shelters and things like that. But again, I need to read through that a little bit more. But those are some of the things that the cities have in common. They seem to have in common with some of the ordinances that relate specifically to camping or not camping, but safe parking and or emergency shelter. So it's like a time limit. You have to have management in conjunction with the city, security plan that is approved, permitting, different things like that. So in unincorporated Pierce County, that ordinance is still being worked on, and I don't anticipate having that finalized until December, according to the schedule that I was given with the department that's working on that, the planning department and coding department that are working on that for unincorporated Pierce County areas. So more to come on that. Otherwise, we have some stories in safe parking. So being able to share that with a community group is huge. I have a grandmother living in a van with 2 grandkids who are autistic, if you can believe that, who are struggling to just survive. And the grandmother has a job and the mom is involved, but not really involved. So we are doing our best to try to get them into some sort of shelter where the kids can have a place. One is school age, one isn't. One of them is nonverbal. I mean, guys, we can't make these stories up. You all know that. We all deal with people with different stories. And I think that's one of our charges as people that are doing advocacy, is to share individual stories so people that don't understand about homeless actually start to understand about that. All of our spots, except for the one that's in Gig Harbor, are full. We currently have a waiting list, and we are working on a plan to help get people who have become very comfortable in safe parking, because we have developed communities at each of these locations. Now we're trying to really get them to start looking at taking the next step and moving out. So it's a very interesting process. But on the one hand, we feel really grateful that we have managed to create a safe community for people who are feeling so safe that they want to stay there forever and have put up a garden and all of that kind of thing. So it's kind of, you got to do it, try and figure out the balance there. But I don't know if anybody has any questions, but right now we're doing good with that.
You are all great doing the work you're doing, and thank you for the story too. You're absolutely right about the need to hear that. So I don't know, Rosemary, if your group is ready to share about the Get Involved page, or if that's what we're on to.
I can just say that we have developed, for those of you who are new especially, we've finally developed something that will be put up on the webpage soon that will replace what says committees right now, which is probably a really exciting menu choice that you went to right away and found out all about all our committees. But it'll replace that with something that's more broad and also more specific, with names of people and opportunities that you can get involved in. I know when Todd asked earlier about having a list of people to take actions This will be a place where you can at least find some people that you might be able to ask those sorts of questions about, and also will give you a better sense of what it is we do and how we do it. So that'll be up soon. Just wanted to let you know that the governance work group is keeping us focused a bit on who we are and who we say we are.
Thank you for that. Are there any other committee reports? People want to get something in here, just raise your hand and let us know. And I'm not seeing anybody. I will move on to we have, Rob has 3 different things here. We've got good trouble announcements. So talking about what you're working on. Again, we have about 15 minutes for all 3 of these. So be aware that there are lots of people in the room. And also reflecting on today's meeting. So anything you have to say about today's meetings, if there's something that you think we could do better or something you really liked, it's time to say that. And then also success stories. So you got something that's gonna make us walk away from this with a little bit lighter heart. This is the time to share that too. So starting with Ed.
I'm reminded by Richard Dorset of the horrendous sweeps that have gone on this week. And we didn't talk about them much. I don't know if we just didn't feel comfortable, but you know, if we had under 150 people displaced this week, I'd be surprised. And they are out on the streets, and you will see them and not recognize them because they will be in different places. And the city is continuing to kill our people. Sorry about that, but it's true. The other thing is in December 21st, please put a note on your calendar that there will be a homeless memorial for all that have died unhoused in 2022. It's the National Day of Mourning for the Homeless. So we'll have more information on where and exactly when that is going on, but it will be on the 21st of December. Thank you.
Thank you, and all true stuff. Sally.
Thank you, Teresa. I'll put this in the chat, but on October 15th at 1 o'clock at Evergreen campus at 6th Avenue, there will be a town hall meeting about non-police crisis response for people experiencing a mental health or drug-related crisis. There's a coalition that is formed to work on that, including Legally Black, including the Conversation 253, the Tacoma Democratic Socialists of America, the Black Panthers. It's a fascinating coalition, but we're advocating for the city to fully fund a non-police crisis response for all of those situations where armed response is not necessary and where a therapeutic and compassionate response would result in a much better outcome. So if you want to learn more about this, come to the town hall on Saturday, October 15th, 1 o'clock at Evergreen. We'll have a speaker from Denver who has a program like this, as well as some local speakers. It'll last about an hour and a half. Well worth your time if you're able to come. Thank you.
All right, so are you able to post that in the chat too, Sally? Thanks. Jan, sorry. I look at your printed name and I say it automatically. Jan.
I'm the one that you just don't call late to dinner. You call me anything else, that's good. 2 things, and maybe we have more if we're going to talk about our social coming up on October 6th. Ryan Booker has offered his place, and we can give details on that. So our social, where we meet not in terms of what we do professionally or at the volunteer work, but we just meet socially. Well, we're going to meet on October 6th between 4 and 7 at an open house at our at Ryan's new place, and I don't have the address, but Teresa or Garrett might. And then under success stories, Garrett, can you share a little photo there with success stories? So a nurse, a mechanic, and 7 DEM cots walk into FOB Village. I tell you, the FOB Village is, and Monique joined us today. That is just an amazing success story. Monique knows what the needs are. She puts the word out. If people have what she needs, then we just go there, and it's just a feel-good place. So hats off to the Department of Emergency Management for releasing surplus supplies. Hats off to Monique, and together we can try to do something. So thank you.
I'll just throw out that that's James in the photograph, and he was kind enough to come help on our workday party when we were doing some yard cleanup at Maureen Howard's house. So
actually, that is Peter.
Peter. Oh my gosh, I got it wrong.
Peter. Yeah, that's okay.
Peter.
That's Peter. Yeah.
Thanks for
and thank you for the shout out there, Jan. But I can tell you, it is a struggle out there. I usually try to talk about all the good stuff, but if I can just really quickly say, in the interest of assisting people with their running of sites, you try to do the best for people, but they still complain. We had a complaint go through to the Attorney General that we weren't taking care of them very well, and so we are dealing with that. But you try your best to serve folks, and then some folks you can't make happy. But I just want to be transparent that we try to do the best, but sometimes there's a few people that get disgruntled and complain about you. But we're going to keep pushing forward. So thank you.
Yeah, that's sad to hear, and I hope it gets a good resolution. And Jan, I think Peter makes you look a little bit shorter than usual. So, Richard.
I can follow up with Sally on this separately, but on the Evergreen meeting for the non-police approach, the HEAL team, the HEAL outreach team, is an armed, uniformed approach. Will that meeting be addressing some of that, or is it more focused on the proposal for an alternative outreach team? We can talk offline, but I'm interested in topic.
It's focused on setting up the non-police crisis response as a new thing that Tacoma desperately needs. And so there might be some side conversation about what the city's doing now and why it doesn't work. But Richard, you and I can talk more. I have a lot more stuff, so let's talk offline. Thank you.
Cool. Oliver.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I've been listening, and I think like one of the recurring things I keep hearing kind of seems like we're trying to change this narrative, and we're kind of pushing back against this narrative that everyone who's experiencing homelessness or anyone who's unsheltered or unhoused is by default a criminal or a drug addict. And like that seems like trying to get the community to change its perspective on that seems kind of hard. And I wonder if, like, is there any effort going into trying to identify which portions of these communities are committing crimes? Because it's not all of them. It's not everyone that's bringing drugs into this. It's not everyone that's committing crime in the community. How are we helping to differentiate between those groups so that the community as a whole is not being targeted that way? And I'm sorry, if there's a resource out there, I'm just curious if there's an effort in that direction, and if so, I would like to get involved with it.
So that was an open question to everyone in the room. Do you know of a resource that would help Oliver in getting involved in the issue he's talking about? And I think a lot of us have worked on this, trying to make it clear that being homeless is not the same as being criminal, but that criminal activity that takes place, whether you're homeless or not, ought to be addressed separately. And I don't know if that's going to come up in your conversation, Sally.
Don't know.
Okay.
I'm not in charge of this meeting. I'm just trying to be sure that people know about it so they can come and learn. And I think there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. And if people have questions, come to the town hall and ask your questions. I think that'd be awesome.
So that might be a starting point. Oliver, you might run into some other people with very similar thoughts there. So
Awesome.
thank you. So anyone else with either a success story, a comment about the meetings, announcements? I want to do a really quick success story to maybe prime the pump. Some of you may not even know about the neighborhood free clinic here in my neighborhood, but they've been going for a long time, and they're a resource that is incredible in how much it does for having such a tiny budget and running almost entirely on volunteers. So there was a woman on the street whose wheelchair broke, and I called them. This was just like we were walking up the street helping her move the wheelchair that she had up the street, and I called the neighborhood clinic, which was right around the corner from us, and they said, sure, we have a wheelchair. So she was able to sit in her wheelchair at the top of the steps where the neighborhood clinic is, while they brought out there was one roller cart and one wheelchair, but they only had one real wheelchair. And it was very nice. And she was, I could move it up the steps. She could sit in the new wheelchair and wheel away. It was that simple and that rapid. So just want to give a shout out to the neighborhood clinic and to make sure people know that it exists. They have an online presence. They're open only 2 evenings a week, but they have been doing that consistently. And they are one of the things that comes up when you talk about people needing healthcare. People are sometimes nervous to go to receive healthcare, and the neighborhood clinic doesn't ask questions about whether you're a citizen. They don't ask questions about, if you don't have ID, they're still going to help you. So please promote that resource. And Kathy.
Yes, I have a question. Did I hear someone in this meeting today mention housing that is going to become available for those with disabilities? Did I mishear that?
I'm waiting for the person who spoke about that to speak up.
Well, I mentioned the Lehigh purchase for permanent supportive housing. So that permanent supportive housing by definition means chronically homeless, which by definition means, a year consecutively homeless, 4 episodes of homelessness over the past 3 years, totaling 12 months, and a documented disability. And that can be substance use, that can be physical disability, that can be sensory disability. And I think there was another mention of permanent supportive housing. So if it's fitting in the permanent supportive housing category, then it has to be somebody with a documented disability, which is great to make sure it goes to people that are vulnerable and hard, because a lot of times it's hard to get, especially mental health, documented because of a lot of the barriers mental health creates all on its own.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a whole other world called other permanent housing, OPH, and that is a housing that prefers people with disabilities but doesn't require it. So things like Guadalupe Vista, which is operated by Catholic Community Services, fits into that category. So it's super irritatingly complex. Every project's kind of its own unique little butterfly.
I think irritatingly complex kind of is a good designation for this whole issue. So thank you for that. I might steal that phrase.
Well, and I would say that we have choices to make, and we choose to make it complicated because everybody needs something a little bit different. So if we had one provider providing all the homeless services in Pierce County, it would be a smooth operating machine that would not be complex, but it would also not serve massive numbers of people because everyone needs something unique. So So whenever we complain about the complexity, whenever I complain about the complexity, I'm often creating it. And so we need to make it better, right? But that's a balance that that we need to do is, meet people's needs uniquely, treat everyone as human beings, and have a system you can navigate, and that we can get there. It's hard.
So along with that wonderful response to systems and reflection on how we can live in systems with hope, I want to ask Mike Yoder to mention the Homeless Connect. Make sure that everybody hears about that.
I just pasted that in the flyer in the chat. Please download that, because on the back of that flyer is our route map, or it's not a map, it's a route list. So we have arranged for the first time ever, we've worked with a transportation company that we've hired to provide professionally driven vans that will stop at nearly every shelter around town. So we're really wanting to get everybody into our Homeless Connect event, where we'll have about 30 service providers, lots of free giveaways. So please spread the word and make sure people are aware of the transportation that's available. It should be easier than ever to get to the event. And the last event we did in June, we had over 450 connections to services by the people that were there. And that's 450 opportunities for people's lives to be changed. That's connection to benefits and resources. So it's a one-stop shop where lives can be changed. Please spread the word. 1 week from today, 11 to 3 at the LDS Church.
And do you still, thank you for that. And Associated Ministries is great to be continuing that on. Do you need any volunteers still, or do you have everybody?
I think we're in pretty good shape. As of last week, Michelle told me to spread the word here at the coalition that we could use a few people, but if you know somebody who really wants to show up, visit our website, associatedministries.org/PHC, and give us your name. But I think we're in pretty good shape. If you know people in the community, I would say, that are thinking about, like dipping their toes into the shallow end of the pool of working with those experiencing houselessness, showing up at this event and volunteering is a beautiful first step introduction. I think it's a little bit of an easier on-ramp than maybe going with you to an encampment. So for certain kinds of people that you're wanting to woo into increasing their understanding and their compassion for this group of our neighbors, I'd really encourage you to encourage them to come to this event. I think it's a beautiful first step volunteering event.
So we have 60 seconds left, and I saw Jenny's hand up.
No, down. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you all, and see you next week, hopefully, or before. Oh, if you can stay for the planning meeting, that's right after this. We take a 5-minute break, so the planning group will meet again at 11:05 and to talk about the next meeting. So anyone's welcome to stay. See you then.